Today on Roll for Crit, we're bringing you our review of Libertalia Winds of Galecrest from Stonemaier Games. This is a new edition of Libertalia with no subtitle, which came out just about 10 years ago. And whereas that was a pirate-themed game, now it's a sky pirate-themed game. You're all human-animal hybrids, anthropomorphized animal creatures, and you are pirates flying through the sky trying to compete to get, of course, the most loot and the most money.
The game will be played over 3 voyages, aka rounds, and you will try to get doubloons through either just gaining doubloons or maybe some of this loot here. And at the end of the third one, you'll see whoever has the most and therefore the best pirate. Before we begin, we're going to explain this reputation track. Throughout the game, you may earn or lose reputation, in which you will swap with the pieces there. Depending on where you are at the start of each voyage, you will get that many doubloons to begin with. So lower reputation gets more doubloons. However, the higher reputations will earn you better rewards for some cards, as well as tiebreakers, which we'll get to a little bit later. At the beginning of each voyage, one player will have their deck shuffled and will take out 6 cards, with all the other players pulling the matching cards from their decks. All cards are the same outside of player color, so everyone should have the same 6 cards for the very first voyage. Afterwards, each player is going to choose 1 card from their hand to play. They'll be putting it face down, and once everyone has placed a card face down, they will reveal them and sort them. Now, let's take a look over here when someone plays 2 cards of the same number. You're going to look at this reputation track, and depending on where they are, they'll sort themselves that way. So white is farther to the right, therefore, they're going to go more in that direction. This matters, of course, with abilities triggering as well as when you get some loot.
Once everyone's cards are arranged in the right order on the board, then you're going to go through them in the order from lowest number to highest number to begin and take a look at all of the different abilities that those cards have. You'll notice that they have different symbols in front of them. The first ones you'll resolve are the daytime symbols, and you just go through one at a time and resolve all of those if they have any. If not, you just skip it. Then you're going to do the opposite. You're going to start from the last card and you're going to work your way backwards. And starting with the card that's over here, first, this player who owns this character is going to get the chance to take 1 loot token from the current day that you're on. Then, if they have any dusk abilities, this symbol right here, they will resolve that dusk ability at that time. Also, some of those loot tokens could have dusk abilities. At the bottom of the board, you'll see how they all have different effects, and the different symbols will tell you exactly when they trigger. Once you've finished resolving your daytime, dusk, and loot abilities, you will take your character back to your ship, basically just keep them face up in front of you for the remainder of the round. And if they have any nighttime abilities indicated by that symbol, then those also occur. There are also anchor abilities. You can see, as I said, some of the loot has it. Some cards will have it as well. Those will trigger at the end of the entire voyage. So after all of these days are cleared out and everyone has finished playing their cards for that number of rounds. As you might expect, most of the types of abilities that cards have will be earning you doubloons, maybe giving you a chance to get extra loot or manipulate the loot or harm other players, maybe even taking out some of their cards before they get the chance to do something. Once all that is finished and you go through all of the different days for that specific voyage, all the characters that are still on your ship are going to go to your graveyard, so they're going to be gone for the next round. But if you didn't play any, you will keep them in addition to the new ones you'll get next time. And any doubloons you have left over get added into your treasure chest. This is basically your score tracker. So each round you're going to end up with a certain amount of points or doubloons in there that are locked, can't be stolen from you or anything like that. And you play for 3 voyages. Each time another day is added, so they get a little bit longer, and you'll probably have a few more cards in your hand each time as well. And whoever has the most at the end wins.
By the way, this board is double-sided. You're looking at the day side board. There's a night side board. The difference being, or stormy side, sorry, is the abilities are a bit more aggressive over there, but they also include some tiles here that show both sides of the abilities if you want to try and maybe mix and match if there's certain powers that you enjoy more over others.
Yeah, the stormy ones tend to be slightly more involved, maybe a little bit more aggressive or harmful to certain players. Usually you want all of the loot, but there is stuff like this relic here, which actually makes you lose coins.
The major mechanic to point out is at the beginning of each voyage, you will be drawn the same 6. However, usually you will end up with 2 cards left over from the last one, And depending on which ones you played, meaning that Voyages 2 and 3, you're actually going to probably have different options available in your hand compared to your opponents. So if you're good at keeping track, or maybe you just know your opponent played their very high value card last voyage, so you know you have that to save it for maybe a very important day that you really need to make sure you get that map piece or something.
Right.
So that's where I think some of the variety of the gameplay is going to really start to shine.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance because for the most part, people share most of the same cards. So on that front, you are trying to figure out which cards make sense to play and what do I think other people are going to play, because maybe if we all play the same number and your numbers trigger first because of the reputation, that's not a good play for me. But like you said, then you're going to start keeping some. Maybe you even have a card. There's some that let you, for instance, get cards back from your graveyard, this is called, or from your ship. You can bring them back into your hand or even trigger a ship ability again. So it's not like you're always going to have exact information about what players are going to do. You kind of have a framework, and within that, there's a lot of mischief that can occur.
Oh, yeah. Because you hit the higher player counts, there's going to be a whole lot of, you see this swapping around, which therefore changes the way these are organized, or some cards that may replace themselves with another card, and then people might mess around with the loot that's available. So there is plenty of pirate shenanigans to go around. This version does have a 2-player and single-player mode. The 2-player adding this little board here, pretty much simulating a third player to mess around with treasure. That's really what it is. And the Autonoma doing something similar, just playing cards based on a deck of cards with its own little sheet.
Yeah, so this is, as we said, based on another game, the original game just called Libertalia, which neither of us have played. So for us, this is a brand new experience. Yes. But of course, some of the changes are indicated and we know about them.
Yeah, we looked that up, in particular the tiebreaker one, because I was hearing people talk about that. In the previous ones, that if you had two of the same cards like we had here before, instead of having this track, they might have separate silver values, I believe is what they called them. So the decks were not the same. In this, the decks are 100% the same. It's literally player color, so you don't have to worry about if there is some weird balance because the green deck is better against aggressiveness or something.
Yeah, that's what all this reputation track, that's brand new. That's what that handles now, is tiebreakers mainly, and some cards will refer to it as well. And of course, there's all new art. There are also 10 more cards than in the first game. Some of their abilities have been tweaked. So there's a lot. The core of it, from what I can tell, is the same, but they definitely tweaked, enhanced a lot of areas. This is not just a straight remake or reskin. This is, I think, qualifies as a new addition, so to speak.
I would agree. It sounds like there's enough changes in there where you're going to get a significant play experience. It's not just they added a brighter coat of paint, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, just trying to understand how the rules worked before, I'm so happy this is how it works. I don't have to think.
And for me, yeah, I agree with you. And also, I much prefer this nice art style. I think the cute animal people and the bright colors, I think it's much more inviting and fun to play around with. You know, like, it's a Stonemaier game. We always say they usually have really good production value. I will say this isn't, for a Stonemaier game, this is almost like a modest effort, but everything is still like nice. You know, everything feels good. These loot tokens are, that's another thing. These used to be able to be hidden, I believe, but now they're double-sided.
Or at least not as clear, I think.
Yeah, so like they're all much more trackable and things like that. So those little things.
Yeah, and of course, so this is coming from two people who never played
right.
the previous version. That said, I still think from the description, you still get that feeling of, while you're playing the game, of like a lot of mind games going on, like, all right, I know Jonathan has the 1728 still in hand, but I used my 28 before, so now he can beat me on getting that. But I know that Jeff over here also has that, maybe wants to take the sword and take out your guy or something. So you still have those, like, trying to guess how everyone's going to play, especially, of course, certain abilities and cards refer to adjacent players or whatnot. So you're like, I don't have to worry about it. That guy's sitting across the table from me.
Yeah, that's definitely what makes this game shine, is those head games. And even just for yourself, I mean, you're always worrying about other players, but it's like, which card do I play when? And like I know I want to play this, but it might affect a different card I have in my hand, so maybe I need to wait and do something else. You also might end up with cards sometimes, like especially I feel like on the first round of the game or the first voyage, sometimes you'll have a card that's like just doesn't matter yet because it'll say
right. There is a card example that says copy a moon ability. You may never draw a moon ability, even like outside of the first voyage. None of the voyages. That happened to us once. There are ones that are amazing near the end because that's when you have certain things set up.
But I think what's interesting about that is the fact that because everyone does have the access to those same cards, it's not like, oh, I drew a bad hand. Then now the game becomes, well, everyone has to deal with that card that's not as optimal.
Right.
So how do we do that?
I do feel you'll never have those bad hands, as you said. It's at worst.
It can be kind of, I've definitely had some where I feel like a lot of my cards are boring, for lack of a better term.
Boring, but not, when I say bad hand, usually I think of when like if I play TCG, I have a bad hand while you had a great hand.
It won't be like unbalanced.
The worst I think comes maybe sometimes the loot can be really weirdly
These are all, randomly distributed if that
and it's number of players, by the way.
Yes.
And depending on the ability and stuff, we had a game where like it felt like half the people didn't get a chance to get loot.
Yes, it is possible that someone removes this and someone takes two and whatever it is that could happen. And then there's these maps which you're trying to get sets of them or more than other players. So that's also something people are going to be fighting over. So this, depending on what loot comes out, that can also really change the dynamic.
But we still had a great time trying to outmaneuver each other while also trying to maybe be that you question sometimes if you're going to be worth that extra little bit of greedy if you think you can get away with it. Crits and misses for Libertalia. Wins of Galecrest.
Crits. At the start of each voyage, players gain access to the exact same cards from their decks, meaning you have to think carefully and strategically about how and when you're going to play them. But as the game progresses, there will be some variation, and players will be able to hold or bring back different cards from the other players. So you won't always have perfect information.
This game does a perfect balance of giving each player similar actions. However, depending on how players choose or choose not to play actions, significantly changes what strategies they have near the end of the game.
In particular, we were fans of the reputation track, an extra element added to the game which comes into play in certain card abilities and is a much more interesting way to figure out breaking ties.
There are many things in this new edition, but the tie-breaking rules are one that we're focusing on. From what we can tell, each deck had different ways to break ties depending on silver values, meaning there would be probably plenty of squabbles of who gets to play the red color versus the blue color. This way, just choose the color you like, all the cards are the same, and you just need to manage that reputation track. Misses. There are 40 unique cards in each deck, and depending on which ones you draw, some cards just might not be as powerful without other cards to help them out, or maybe just aren't interesting at all outside of just what their number is.
Everyone will have access to the same cards, at least initially, so it's hard to feel like you're at a true disadvantage in the game, but it can feel like there's just nothing for you to do on your turn.
The game does add a 2-player mode and a solo mode, which I do appreciate, and they're perfectly serviceable and fine. But to be honest, the real joy of this game and the mind games that go around it, you probably want 3, if not 4 people at least. As I stated earlier, we don't have the nostalgia of the previous version, and I'm sure we could argue with someone who is a bigger fan about it, about which one's better. But overall, I think the core mechanics that are still in both versions, this idea of similar cards that you have to think which ones your opponent has played or has not played, is really fun. There is a lot to go around, and personally, at least for me, the fact that I don't have to worry about tiebreaker unique values on cards and have this track, I enjoy that a lot more. I just know if I have the smuggler, I know what your smuggler is, and that is helpful. That said, I do think, I didn't want to name this as a miss. It's something I thought about, but this is a lot worse in the previous version. This is when people brought this up actually a lot with those tiebreakers. This is definitely the kind of game, if you have more experience, it's gonna show a lot more. If you brought someone new to the table, like if you think about the tie-breaking system more and they don't think about that, so they know you get to pick loot first because of his ability, or the brute, for example, who takes someone out, if they forget like, oh, I know that that's going to keep getting removed. You might want to be careful about that. So try to keep everyone Similar, if you're introducing someone new, definitely stick to the Sunny abilities. Do not use the aggressive ones. That might give them a harder time.
Yeah, I mean, I almost, for me, that's almost like a crit because it means that, like that aspect of it is the downside of it, but the upside means the more you play
Correct.
it, the more you're going to learn.
That's why I didn't want to say it's not a miss. It's more of a...
It's a caution.
Yes, a cautionary. But the problem was,
to be aware of.
Before, when the tiebreaker was unique to decks, like this may have a value of 6 versus a 7. If you're more experienced, you're like, I know the blue one's much better at that. But you wouldn't know that if you're new. But you don't have to worry about that now.
so we're not going to mention it anymore.
No, but that's why I'm saying I like that here.
But yeah, even I like that even just after a few games, not just like the specific cards, but even just knowing everything that's possible to come from the deck, being a little more familiar with it, and then seeing like, oh, this time I got this card with this other combo that I never had before. And that's interesting. And now I can use my brain and think, oh, I know last time that player did this or that. I think I like that there's a lot of room to grow and really like learn the ins and outs of these cards. And speaking, as like you said, as someone who hasn't played the original, I'm grateful that Stonemaier picked it up and put out a really nice looking version of it that's fun to play.
No, I think it's
a great title.
Yeah, a great addition.
Yeah, you have the opportunities to be a little piratey and mess with each other.
But sky piratey.
Sky piratey, yes. They are. Remember, these are in the sky. It's very different from other pirates. So yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Libertalia and you already have the original version, it really depends on how much you love it and whether or not you really want to pick this up, I think. I do, again, we haven't played it. My impression is that this is an improved version of it. But if you're really happy with the original, then you probably don't need to rush out and get this. It's not so different, but I don't know. Maybe it is to you. Like someone who has played it, you'll have to decide that and tell us in the comments what you think on that front. But if you don't have the game, I think definitely pick it up.
Yeah, this is definitely a great one. Let us know if you have never played it and this is enough to pick it up, or if you're still going to look for that old version, or if you have the old version, what is the reasons you are or are not going to look at this? Is it the art alone? You just don't like the aesthetics? Do you think that you can add in, for example, the reputation track sort of as in essence, a house rule, but real rule now? Let us know in those comments.
Yeah, well, look forward to hearing from you there. That's been our review of Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this is Roll for Crit.
Hey there, thank you so much for watching our video. Please, if you can, hit that like and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. And check out our Patreon. There we have a lot of cool stuff, including a Discord and a second part to our podcast. If you just want to hear the free one, don't worry. You can check out our board game podcast, which releases weekly, in the links down below.